This podcast is brought to you by NVIDIA and the new GeForce GTX 580 GPU. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 136, recorded December 29th, 2010. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Josh Walren.
And I'm Al Malventano.
We have increased our podcast count from 2 users to 3 users with the addition of Alan Malventano. We are still missing the sole Canadian, Jeremy, still out ice fishing, doing all that holiday stuff or whatever. This will be the last podcast of 2010. We can all celebrate that. Another year is gone. We were all closer to death, et cetera, et cetera. The first podcast of 2011 is always complicated because it happens during CES. And actually, all 4 of us, me, Josh, Alan, and Jeremy, will all be at CES when all of this normal recording time is going on. So we're going to record a podcast still. But we don't know. We don't think it's going to be broadcast live on the Twit Network if you're watching this live. But it will be published either on Thursday or Friday in the normal fashion on the website and through the RSS feeds. If you don't know where that is and you just listen live, shame on you for not subscribing. It's pcper.com/podcast is the URL to get all that good information. Emails and telephone calls, voicemails are what we thrive on here at the show. Podcast at pcper.com, and the toll-free number in U.S. and Canada is 1-888-38-PC-PER. Call that. Leave us a question. Leave us a comment. Anything you want to do. We've got at least one of those for today's show. Now, we don't, again, it's kind of the calm before the storm. CES is coming up very quickly. A lot of products are going to be released and announced and discussed, some of them sooner than we may have thought. Now, thanks a lot. Thanks to some companies that like to pull in NDAs. Those will be discussed next week. So today we've got a little bit of a calm before the storm. We've still got some interesting things to talk about. The first thing is an editorial that Josh posted, I believe it was actually this morning on the website. This is something titled What to Expect from Desktop Graphics in 2011. And it's not so much a peek into the future as it is kind of what we will see in the immediate part of 2011. Is that right, Josh?
That's correct. You know, I'm still kind of speechless here because I can't believe they're letting Jeremy into the United States from Canada. It just doesn't seem possible.
They still have a chance to block it, right? I mean, he might just not show up. And since he doesn't have a cell phone,
no fly list.
And since he doesn't have a cell phone, we won't know, right? He'll have no way of getting in touch with us. He'll send us a letter from, the U.S. Embassy or the Canadian Embassy, and be like, "Dear Ryan, please come get me whenever you get this," something like that. So
he'll be out looking for a payphone.
They don't have those anymore.
No,
maybe in Canada they do. I don't know.
Anyway, go ahead.
Anyhow, article. I whipped this one up. It was pretty fast in coming, and I better stop the innuendo jokes right now. But anyway, what to expect from desktop graphics going into 2011. We have a bunch of stuff that's coming up, and nothing's really new, except something from NVIDIA, but we'll get that in a second. I don't know. My thoughts are transposed and out of sorts, and I've only
you did write this, didn't you? I mean,
once upon a time, but it was it was about 17 hits of LSD ago, and I just don't know. Anyway, I went through the different stratifications of the market for video cards and kind of looking at where we're sitting for 2011. Of course, really the video card to talk about a lot of in this past year is the GTX 460. It was really a game changer. It came out at a price that was just pretty astounding considering its performance and how it really stomped on last year's type stuff from either the HD 4800 series or the GTX 200 series. I mean, this was a big step for everybody. It took AMD really about 5 months to kind of catch up with what NVIDIA did with the GTX 460, because at the time we had the HD 5770, which just really is not nearly as fast. I mean, it's feature competitive with the GTX 460, but it just didn't have the muscle to handle games like the NVIDIA product. The HD 5830 was pretty hot. It was way too cut down. It was never a very popular card, especially in its price range. Some people bought it, but overall it was just, I mean, you reviewed it, Ryan, and it was just kind of meh. Right. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal, but the GTX 460 has certainly had some legs, and it's kind of interesting to say that because it's only 5 or 6 months old, and we're still saying, hey, it's got legs and still worthwhile. But just the competition between the two has been so intense that this card is really stuck a flag in the sand, and right now, I think it was initially released for $199 for the 768 meg version, $229 for the full 1 gig. Well, you can get the 768 meg version. I think I saw on Woot the other day that there was a special going on with a manufacturer's rebate or mail-in rebate. That the card was $89, which is just, it's pretty astounding. You can get those regularly for around $149. And then the 1 gig version is around $179. I mean, that's just, for the price you pay, that's a whole lot of card. AMD has now finally come out with the HD 6850, and a little higher than that is the HD 6870. 6850 is pretty comparable in performance to the GTX 460, and it's starting to get down there in price, but it's still a pretty new card, and it just hasn't gotten the kind of traction that the 460 has. Now, another reason you may think that, hey, why are these prices on these cards coming down? Well, I haven't been told anything about it. I'm assuming Ryan maybe has, and so he probably can't talk. But next month we're expecting the GTX 560, which is the 500 series kind of refresh of this. I believe that it's going to have a full complement of stream units, because even in the GTX 460 1 gigabyte version, it's got some stream units that are disabled on it. So it's going to be a slightly faster card. It'll probably have a little bit better thermals, and it's going to be a nice little refresh in that $200 to $250 range. So the next step up, I can't even remember. It's kind of the in between the GTX 60, the HD 6870, and the GTX 470, which is still kicking, still around, still a good card. But now you can get those both for around $259, $249, depending on what kind of rebates and sales are available. They're both very, very good cards again. And the thing that kind of stinks for any kind of user out there is they probably say, "Hey, I've got this budget, and I want to keep to this budget," and then they kind of look up and say, "Hey, for only $20 more, I can get a card that's maybe 30% faster. It's got a couple of extra gizmos to it." And so they look at that and they kind of convince themselves, yeah, that's what they want. And next thing you know, their wandering eye captures something that's another $20 or $30 higher in price. Next thing you know, they had an original $200 budget, and now they're hitting $300 just because there's so many easy small steps going up, and you see a definite performance increase in each step. So up above that, I think I talked about the HD 5870s. They're older cards certainly, but they're still very fast. Again, they're at the $259 price point. Then we have the GTX 470s versus the 6970s, very, very comparable. In between the, 349, 379 point, in between that, the 6850s, and this is stuff, everybody all knows, but going into 2011, we have just this huge market of really, really, really competent cards, and I've been even playing with a GTS 450, which is NVIDIA's, $100, $110 kind of entry-level DX11 performance class product, and that can play pretty much any game out there at 1680 by 1050 with, pretty high-quality settings. And considering how many people have those less expensive, 20, 22-inch monitors that do 1680 by 1050, I mean, these are really fantastic cards, and I mean, you just go up the line, and until you hit that $379 price point, nothing is totally out of range for most people's budget. But when you start getting into the GTX 480, which is still available, you can sometimes get that on special for around $359, but you don't really want to because it's essentially the same performance as the GTX 570. But then you got the GTX 580. I think there was like 4 cards on Newegg the other day that you could possibly get in between $509 and $559. And then I think that there was one HD 5970, which is the dual HD 5850 chips on one card, and that was for a smoking $739. So that
actually, we got a voicemail in this week that was way too long. It was like at 90 seconds is when the system cuts it off. So if your question goes beyond 90 seconds, that's not a good thing. But part of it was that he found an HD. He was thanking us for the podcast and pointing him to like, hey, go with this GTX 460. And he found one, I think he said for like 130, a 1 gig GTX 460 at Micro Center that was like $139 after a rebate or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane the amount of card that you can get now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if you look kind of back in the past, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, there were some pretty distinct price and performance stratifications. Now, certainly, let's say, for instance, the GeForce 4200 was not all that much slower than the GeForce 4600, but once you started to go down to like the GeForce 4MX, that was like $50 less expensive than the other one, you took a huge performance hit, plus you didn't even have full DirectX 8 compatibility. Same thing on the Radeon side. The Radeon 9700 Pro was great. Then you jump down to the Radeon 9200 series, and I mean, it was just barely faster than the old Radeon 8500, and in fact, it was kind of a little bit slower in some things. So when you look at what we have now and how many games it can play and how many, you know, good quality settings in games that you can actually use, it's pretty amazing what you can get for each dollar you pay.
I agree. I think 2011, like you kind of summarize in the end of the piece, is going to be perhaps slower in terms of iterations of product releases because of the process technology issues, but I think it will still be very interesting for discrete graphics. I was actually just looking over some documentation from Intel about their new processor release, and it talks about increases. There are projected increases in desktop computer sales as opposed to what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, which are decreases in desktop computer sales compared to notebooks and that type of thing, which is good news for discrete graphics market. It's also good news for Intel with their upcoming Sandy Bridge integrated graphics market, that type of thing. But I think anytime we see growth in this area, it's going to be good for gamers in general. NVIDIA and AMD and their discrete parts should all benefit in 2011, 2012, and that type of stuff.
Because what's kind of nice, and just to go on a segue here, is that the people who do buy the Intel stuff and will actually try out a 3D game, and maybe they're kind of amazed by what they're seeing, the interactivity in some of these titles, the stuff that it's going to be like giving a free taste of a little something, and you want more, which is going to help AMD and NVIDIA quite a bit. So
yeah.
I know I would have been that way back in 1996 if somebody had just, at that point showed me what a Voodoo Graphics could do.
It's like when I saw Quake GL for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it just opens your eyes and you think, hey, that looks great. Hey, let me try this old, F-22 that had this voxel engine that was all, CPU, and so you're looking at it and you're like, these textures are crap, everything's blocky, why can't anything be filtered? And you go back to the, MechWarrior 2 on the Voodoo Graphics and you just start drooling and you're thinking that this looks lovely, and then they hear the Voodoo 2's coming out and you drop $299 on the 12 meg version and and it just never stops. It's horrific in a good way.
I was doing a lot of integrated graphics testing this week, and even like in a game that you think is pretty simple, like StarCraft 2, the difference between the low settings, the medium settings, and then the high settings is really dramatic. When you see them like iteratively side by side, one after the other, you're like, wow, that looks like almost a totally different game at that point. So hopefully some of that will happen. Before we move on and talk with Alan about a couple storage news pieces he posted up this week, we want to thank the first of today's podcast sponsors. That would be Audible.com, the Internet's leading provider of audiobooks. Audible has over 75,000 titles across all types of literature and featuring audio versions of many New York Times bestsellers. For listeners of this podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try the service. Now, if you've never used audiobooks before, they're kind of like books on tape, only not from the 1980s. So you can listen to them on your phone, on your iPod, on your Zune. I think they have an application for the Android devices now. Your Kindle will play back audiobooks, so you can both read and listen on the same device. Those types of things. A lot of GPS devices will play back audiobooks. There's a ton of devices that will play these, and you can use audiobooks anytime where you can't read. Say you've got return trips back from the holidays. You're driving back from mom and dad's. It's a 10-hour drive. You want to shut the kids up. You put headphones on them, and then you put in an audiobook in your own MP3 player into the stereo that way. Exercising, even your daily commute if you take a train, or even if you just got like a 40-minute drive one way, that's it's an hour and a half worth of reading time that you wouldn't have been able to get any other way. Now, we're supposed to recommend a book for you, and I think Josh has one to recommend. This is a Dan Brown novel. I think most anybody, if you're familiar with literature at all, knows who Dan Brown is. His most famous work is The Da Vinci Code, which I believe was made into a horrible movie with Tom Hanks. But his most recent book, is it his most recent book, Josh? The Lost Symbol?
I believe it is his most recent book.
And you just finished it. It's a pretty good book. I actually think I read it a long time ago. This audio version is almost 18 hours in length, so you're looking for something to kill some time. These will definitely help. A pretty good page turner, if you will, in audio form, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I bought it at the Denver airport as I was going down to Texas for Thanksgiving, and I read it through the flight as my wife tried to wrangle and wrestle my two children. And, I finished it up very quickly in between two flights and staying at the parents' house for Thanksgiving.
Nice.
Yes.
So again, if you want to get your free audio download, it's completely free. You get to keep it even if you decide not to keep the service. All you have to do is visit audiblepodcast.com/PC. Free audiobook download. You could use this one, any other book. Like they said, 75,000 titles. Chances are you're going to find a lot of stuff you're going to like. And again, that's audiblepodcast.com/PC. We thank them for their support of PC Perspective. Now, Alan. Time for him to wake up and discuss a couple of, we'll call them minor to mid-range storage news announcements. The first one being one of our favorite companies, Drobo, releasing support for 3 terabyte hard drives. So that should affect about 6 of us, right?
No more than, come on, maybe more than 6. The fact that this firmware is coming out based on how many emails we were getting from listeners and readers asking, hey, does the Drobo support these drives? I think the number will increase from 6 pretty quickly.
Good.
So here's the deal. We talked about this a week or two ago. Drobo S came out with the 2nd generation model that had USB 3 support. Based on this firmware, it looks like the 2nd Gen S model is really just identical to the 1st Gen, except for some kind of different interface. Just the USB interface portion, they just updated it to USB 3. And because of that, which, granted, I'm still hypothesizing on that one, it's the same firmware. So for Gen 1 and Gen 2, it's just this 2.1.0 firmware adds 3 terabyte support to the Drobos. Now, this is something that they have to roll out to all the other models as well. So if you have a Pro or an Elite or an FS, any of the other models, you have to wait for it to get through their QC. For them to actually push out that update. And Drobo's pretty hardcore in their QC cycle. Like they're not just gonna push something out right away. I had to lean on them for weeks just to try to get them to, hey, when's this firmware coming out for the S? Because we want to test this thing and see how it handles it. And they still were just like, nope, sorry, gotta wait. QC cycle's gotta finish. So nice. They're probably gonna prioritize it based on where they have the most demand, which it makes sense that an S That's probably their hottest seller as far as end users, typical thing that average Joe's going to put on their desk. Those are probably the people that are asking for it the most. So there it is. It came out. We have a Drobo OS, which I just fired up this afternoon, and I need to get it to update the firmware before I can even pay attention to any of the 3 terabyte drives. For those wondering, if you put a 3 terabyte drive in one of the Drobo units without the support, it still recognizes it as 3 terabytes. It just it can't use it for storage. That's the catch. But with the firmware, at least it tells you, but it does show up as red. It shows up as red and says, "Hey, sorry, have a nice day. Not using this yet." So that's really it on that one. A little side note: if you're on the fence about getting a Drobo Pro or a Drobo OS right now, if you're willing to go 3 terabytes on the drives, you could. Let's say I did the math when I was typing up the news post, but 5 3 terabyte drives in a Drobo OS is only a couple terabytes shy of 8 2 terabyte drives in a Pro. Right? So if you were thinking, well, should I get the Pro or not? Well, the S also has eSATA and now USB 3, neither of which are in the Pro or the Elite even. So it's really, they sort of tailored the features. The pendulum swung way to the other side. Okay, this is end-user desktop. These kinds of functionalities are what those users are going to want versus enterprise side where those guys just want to plug in gigabit Ethernet and just be done with it, right? And just get a nice SCSI link. It's out. We're testing it, and we'll see how it goes. I have been assured that it's supposedly as seamless as any other Drobo thing, so I'll find out soon enough. And that's it on the Drobo piece. Intel, which had been quiet for a while, and it's weird that Intel's next solid-state drive thing, they did manage to push one out before the year's end. However, it wasn't what I was expecting, right? We were expecting third-generation SSDs out of them was supporting USB, or not USB. Wow, that would be cute. Serial ATA 6 gigabit. Not yet. Hasn't happened yet. However, there's this 310 series of solid-state drives that came out. So these are SSDs that are... Okay, so what was it? PhotoFast came out with that the new MacBook Air SSD.
Right, but then they were kind of asked politely to not make them anymore, I think.
Right. I'm pretty sure that standard or sort of standard that Apple was using for that guy was actually a mini PCI Express physical form factor, but it was a longer, that drive was pretty long. It almost looked like a DRAM chip sideways, right? But the connector was mini PCIe, but the catch was there was not PCI Express signals going over it. It was serial ATA, right? So sort of like what OCZ was doing, right? With what was the name of that drive? Basically, OCZ was taking PCI Express signals, they were passing them over just using another connector, using something that should be for serial ATA signals or eSATA signals, and they were passing PCI Express. This is like the opposite. Right? Okay. They're using a PCI Express form factor since it's just something that's standardized and easy enough to follow a spec. But they jumbled up the logical signals in this case. So now you still have power. The power's probably using the same pins, but instead of data, it's for data for PCI Express, it's data for serial ATA. And so they came out with this new SSD that follows this form factor that I'm assuming other manufacturers are planning on going with as well, because realize you can't just take this guy and plug it right into a mini PCIe slot on a laptop and expect it to show up as a solid-state drive. Right? Your laptop has to have this, some kind of back-end functionality that's going to talk to this properly over that port. But if you've ever messed around with like one of those little Broadcom mini PCI Express Wi-Fi boards for your laptop, for example, like if you tried to add Wi-Fi functionality or just open up your laptop for any reason, you see those little tiny, really small. We're talking like, I don't know, 1/3 of a credit card. If you took like a 1/3 cut out of a credit card, about that size. Well, imagine an X25M second-gen drive with roughly the same specs and performance and features and everything, all crammed onto something that size. That's what this 310 series is. So X25s were previously available 2.5-inch form factor, and then they go as low as 1.8-inch form factor. And they both look roughly the same. The chip layout's about the same. They just trimmed off some of the edges of the PCB for those. This is completely just rearranged everything, and I'm still having a hard time figuring out how they electrically connected those flash chips on there to get that many channels, right? Because it doesn't look like they put 10 flash chips on that board. You just can't fit it. And they probably didn't. It's probably like multiple channel within the chip, right? Within each IC to actually communicate that, to get that same kind of performance. Because the IOs per second they're claiming match that of the 34 nanometer, basically the second gen SSDs that they produce right now.
Wow.
So this is in a 40 gig and an 80 gig model. The 40 gig model, just as with the current 2.5-inch form factor drives, those specs are a little bit lower because that controller uses half the number of channels, right? That's the reason for between the 40 and 80, the current generation stuff. These drives, I'm guessing something else similar is at play, but again, we can't really gauge the channel layout just by looking at product pictures because it's hard to see. Even if they doubled up their channels per IC on this really tiny board, how can you take 10 channels and divide it down to 5, right? When you'd be using half of one IC or something? Yeah, it just doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
It doesn't add up.
That would be your question.
Yeah, that's for me to figure out and report.
Maybe it's a secret new controller running at double data rate.
Who knows?
No,
you never know. So. I don't know. Well, no. Here's what's weird about that specifically. The latency number is even identical as far as the specs go. Right, IOs per second. So even if they did some kind of double data rate, something like that, you'd still kind of expect the latencies change, even minimally. Even the power draw, identical numbers. The only change in any spec was like the maximum sequential read throughput. It on the second gen drives was 250 meg per second. This drive, for some reason, they listed as 200. But with every other spec being identical, I think the drive is probably going to, like in real life, it's probably going to read just like the other drives did. They might have just been a little more conservative on their read spec just because of the way benchmarks actually pan these drives out, right? Because we never really see 250 out of these guys. Usually we see 220, something like that. So they might have just, Intel tends to feel a little bit conservative on their specs. Like X25Ms, the 80 gig model has always had a 70 meg per second listed sequential write speed, but the drives always go 80, right? So they've always round down just a little bit, I guess, to be safe.
Did you know that Intel has an SSD application in the iTunes store?
In the iTunes store? No, I did not know
drives
that.
And stuff.
Well, what does it do? It is this an iPhone app or something?
It's just an iPhone app, and it lists the specs. I'm looking at it on the iTunes store. And it gives you like
as a storage editor, I would be remiss if I did not bust out my iPhone right now and download that thing and get it on.
Yeah, you should try that. It's just called Intel Solid State Drives by Marvelocity.inc or Marvelocity Inc. So yeah, you let me know.
So some other company just said, hey, let's just make an app.
But this is officially like Intel branded. Like it was weird. Promoted by Intel.
Why would you? Yeah. Why would you need this? This thing.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'll find out. We'll talk about it next week, I guess.
All right.
Yeah. So it's good to see Intel coming out with something this really, really tiny form factor because again, that's of all the solid state drives we want to see in pretty much anything. I mean, it's Intel and SandForce as far as I've been going for a while now, right? Because those are the two big ones. So yeah, I mean, if you can get your really tiny form factor like netbook or even something smaller than that, if a company has to choose what solid state drive they're going to squeeze in there, I would much rather it be Intel or SandForce as opposed to just some random, who knows what you get with really low I/O per second performance, and that kind of thing we don't want to get out there because we don't want to see solid-state drives getting a bad name. I don't want to see a user come to me, hey, I tried this SSD and my system didn't really go that much faster. Well, it's because it was like the crappiest one on the market or something that whoever the person went with.
What kind of power does that thing pull as compared to a standard X25M?
It's identical. Power draw numbers match. Trying to remember what they list as, 85. Oh man, what's the number in the spec? The idle's really low, and the active is pretty low as well.
It's not like 150 milliwatts for.
No, it's lower than that. The numbers were low. It's like sub 100, I believe. I think it's just over 100 for active and maximum power draw during writes, and then it's 85 idle, somewhere around there. It's pretty low. I was surprised to see that the power draw rating was the same for this guy compared to, the much bigger drives with much higher chip count. So yeah, that's what sort of led me to believe that they're doing some kind of double, multiple channel to the chip trickery in there. I know Samsung does that.
We're going to ask Josh to give us a quick preview of a motherboard review he's working on. First, we'll want to take a quick second to thank the second of today's podcast sponsors. All right, and thank you MSI for that. Now, Josh, we're going to talk quickly. We don't have to get into the whole mess of detail here about the Asus Crosshair 4 Extreme motherboard. This is a review that you'll probably have up by the time people are listening to this if they downloaded it. Is that right? That's correct. Or at least cross your fingers. Now, everybody who's watching live, you got to hold them to that. So, all right, go ahead. Yeah, because, we never know if Armageddon's going to happen tomorrow or... Right, and they need to hear about that motherboard. Maybe the Mayans were a year off. What do you think about that? Then it doesn't matter. Don't even bother then. I'm just not even going to finish writing that damn thing tonight. just not worth it. All right. Well, Asus has kind of been the queen or perhaps king, depending on who you talk to, of high-end motherboards. Very few other manufacturers are able to release motherboards at the price points that Asus is able to do. Wasn't that long ago that we saw, some of the enthusiast kind of branded workstation boards going up to $450. Some of the Core 2 stuff were $300 and $350. Well, they're trying to do the same thing with AMD, and so far they're doing pretty well. The original Asus Crosshair 4 formula was a more basic version based on the 890FX chipset, and it was retailing around for $229. You can get it for a little bit cheaper after some rebates and whatnot. But they have introduced a couple of months ago the Extreme version of this, and this is a totally redesigned board. It is still based around the BIOS that they used for the formula, which is very mature by this point. It's a fast board, and the big deal about it is to make it at that $299 price point, they have added the Lucid Logic's Hydra chip for multi-GPU acceleration. So this is one of the few new AMD boards that will support multiple NVIDIA video cards in multi-GPU. It's not native SLI, but it's the Hydra version of using multiple GPUs. So as the NVIDIA 980A and the 750A are being squeezed out of the market, and NVIDIA just doesn't sell that many anymore, and nobody is really producing very many new designs around these parts, SLI on the AMD platform has been sorely missed, especially considering SLI really got its start with AMD and the original Athlon 64 products. So it's nice to see that Asus is trying to kind of address this niche of people who want to run an AMD processor on, with multiple NVIDIA GPUs. But what's also nice is this board can do native Crossfire as well, and of course because it is Hydra, it supports multiple AMD GPUs in use. This is a good board. It's very solid. It's for $299, you expect a lot, and so far it has really delivered. I've been testing this for about a month and a half. I've been hammering on the Hydra chipset. We've gone through, I think, three
driver revisions, and they've improved. I'm going to have a whole separate article talking about the scaling that we see in multiple configurations of several video cards. I don't know if you've been watching, but a couple of weeks ago I panned my camera around, and there's this huge stack of Asus video card boxes. Well, that's what they've all been for, is I've been, trying to get a good performance profile on what Hydra really does, what it does well, and what it does poorly, and we're starting to really see that, hopefully with Asus and MSI starting to support Lucid, that we will see, a little bit more income come into that company, as well as them hiring some more people to do more driver work and to make this solution work a little bit better. Now, I know, Ryan, you've worked with the Hydra before. I mean, what were some of your initial thoughts? And this is obviously what, 8-9 months ago when you
it was a while ago. Initially it was in the instances where it worked, it was pretty impressive because you were doing something you'd never been able to do before. Use different graphics card generations or even an AMD and an NVIDIA card. When it didn't work, though, it was really annoying because, you knew the potential was there for a user to have purchased a card knowing or thinking they were going to be able to get performance improvements regardless. And in a lot of places where there just was zero scaling on a particular title, or scaling was very minimal. With the two different generations of cards, and a lot of the driver enhancements that they've done have been in finding new ways to recognize the different performance levels between two different cards, and properly assign the amount of work that each card is doing to get the most scaling possible out of the combined available performance from them. So I'm going to be curious to see what your results are at the end of how well they were able to increase as their driver iterations have come out, because they have done a lot of driver iterations.
Something that I've noticed, and I'm going to try to hopefully find out if this is true or not, but it seems like Hydra does a lot better when you have a card that has at least 1 gigabyte of memory. I've used two 768 meg cards, and it gets really, really, really choppy. And I wonder if part of that is because the way the Lucid logic works is both of the cards render as whatever portion of the scene, and then those renderings are compositive on the main master card. And I'm just wondering if there's some extra memory usage on the main card that it has to go through to do that, because there wasn't nearly kind of the micro stuttering on these full 1 gig cards as there are in these 768 megs. So as I move on to GTX 480 testing with 1.5 gigs, it's going to be interesting to observe and see, what kind of changes, I can maybe put my finger on.
Right. Cool. Let's see. Let's go into some emails. We've got a handful of them here today. Again, if you want to email us, it's podcast@pcper.com. Voicemail's 1-888-38-PCPERV. Our first email we're going to send off to Alan.
All righty. Email from Winston about 120 hertz TVs. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Same to you, Winston. I just have a question about 120 hertz LCD TV and 3D gaming. The NVIDIA 3D Vision Kit requires 120 hertz monitor to work, or at least so I heard. Does this mean I have to have 120 hertz LCD TV so I can do 3D gaming on it? Thanks. Keep up the good work on the website and podcast. I don't have this answer.
He says, does it mean if he has 120 hertz LCD TV, can he do 3D gaming on it? The answer is no, because 120 hertz TVs, they're putting out 120 pictures a second, but depending on the TV and when it came out and what brand it is, it's not actually putting out 120 frames of content each time. A lot of 120 hertz TVs, like the first ones, would show the frame of content, all white screen, a frame of content, and all black screen. The frame of content, all white screen, and they would repeat like that, and that just kind of gave you, it had perceived better image quality because you were getting darker darks and whiter whites in that way. The problem with 120 hertz in terms of 3D gaming is you need to be able to send in a 120 hertz signal, and only the HDMI 1.4 A standard actually supports 120 hertz data throughput through the HDMI cables. So even if you use DVI or VGA or HDMI, you will not be able to send a 120 hertz TV 3D signal. Unless that TV is 3D ready, it will very specifically say that, and you will know because you will have paid more for it, that it will be labeled as 3D capable or 3D ready. And then you can use things like NVIDIA's 3D TV Play software and output through a computer right to a 3D TV, or, use your 3D Blu-ray player or PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. All those things have 3D capable games out now as well. So just because you have 120 hertz LCD TV doesn't mean you'll be able to do 3D PC gaming on it, unfortunately. We got another email from Ralph, who is asking about the Sandy Bridge Media Engine. We'll see how much of this we can answer since the launch is not upon us. He says, hello, Ryan and crew. Love the podcast and look forward to it every week. I had a question on the Sandy Bridge Media Engine. I'm thinking about a CPU upgrade and have my eyes on a Core i7-2600 part. I have a Q9650, and I'm not sure that the Sandy Bridge CPU is going to represent a huge boost. I also have a high-end graphics card, so the integrated graphics capabilities of Sandy Bridge are probably not critical. Since I do a lot of encoding, I'm curious what benefits the new dedicated media engine will provide, if it might be enough to make the upgrade worthwhile. Are there other benefits the dedicated unit would provide? Would appreciate any insight you have. So this is actually a really easy question, because if you're using discrete graphics, you don't get to use the media processing engine of the Sandy Bridge processor. And that sucks. And we've told Intel that since the very first time I found that out. That basically means, so all the Sandy Bridge processors are going to have integrated graphics, processor graphics as they're calling them now. They also all include a media encoding engine that they're calling something weird now, but it allows very, really quick video transcoding, video encoding, video decoding for Blu-ray and 3D Blu-ray and that kind of stuff. The problem is that functionality is tied to the graphics driver software and graphics hardware on the CPU. When you have a discrete graphics installed, the system automatically disables the integrated graphics. So that means you won't be able to use the media processing technology on your new processor if you have a discrete card. So that is kind of bad news, I guess. It's kind of crappy. It's kind of like, I don't know, it takes away one of the big new improvements of the Sandy Bridge architecture. I've been testing that, and it's actually a pretty really compelling feature on the processor, but for now you'll only be able to use it with integrated graphics, not if you use discrete graphics. So it's kind of a bummer for a lot of enthusiasts and that kind of stuff. Another email here, Josh?
Sure, email from Josh about memory modules. Is it better to have 2 RAM modules, 2 gigabytes apiece, or to have one 4 gigabyte? Is there a difference? I ask because I am planning on building your budget system on the leaderboard, depending on what happens with the new stuff coming out next year. This will be my first desktop computer build, although I have fixed a few laptops with simple hardware problems. Any advice for a newbie? Thanks for all your knowledge and expertise. Keep up the good work. Usually you're going to want to use 2 DIMMs, just because I think all modern processors and from both AMD and Intel will utilize the dual-channel memory controllers. So to make that work and to get you the better performance, you need to use 2 of the DIMMs. Now, something that's really nice and something that you should grab a hold of while you can, currently the 2x4 gigabyte DIMMs are really affordable. I mean, we're talking $99, $109 for a pair of them. But that's going to start going up here after January. Apparently, the DRAM market bottomed out back in, I think, October, November, and it started to recover. And only now are we starting to see DIMMs hit this point where they're so very wonderfully affordable, and I really need to get my credit card out and get some of these DIMMs while I can, because they're going to start creeping back up till, you're looking at $149, $159 for these same DIMMs in about 2 months. So get them while you can, and get 2. 4 if you're feeling lucky.
Yeah, that actually, there was I don't know, maybe this is there was a question to me on my Twitter feed. It says, does anybody know while the Sandy Bridge motherboards only have 4 RAM slots? And that's because Sandy Bridge is a dual-channel memory controller. I'm sure he was thinking that it was going to be like Nehalem, the initial Nehalem launch, where it was a 3-channel memory controller, so you had 6 DIMM slots on all your motherboards. These are still dual-channel. I think we kind of found that triple-channel just really didn't get the benefits that the cost handed us. So let's see, Alan, we have another email here if you want to take that.
Because he's such a wow head.
Yeah, no, not really. Email from Brandon about WoW gaming. First off, I want to say I love the show. I look forward to it every week. I do have a quick question for you gentlemen. I am currently using an XFX 9600 GT XXX video card in my system, and he's wanting to upgrade, but is on a very tight budget. The only game I play now is WoW, and I play it on a 19-inch 1440 by 900 screen. And WoW on Ultra, I get decent frames while not in town, so that's like while he's out without a lot of graphic stuff to be drawn. 30 to 40 frames per second. But in town or in a raid, it can drop to 7 or lower. He's even seen it drop to 3. I know how well yeah, that is really low. I know how well the 460 1 gig card is, but I don't have that much to spend. Now wait, hold on, pause there for a second. Wasn't it a 460 we were just talking about with like 130 after rebate?
Yeah, but I mean, if you only got $100 to spend, you only got $100 to spend.
Yeah, that's true.
No amount of big wishes.
Yeah. Just don't put gas in your car that week. So I'm wondering if you think a GTS 450 is good enough. I don't plan on expanding my gaming library anytime soon, so I don't really need a card that can play more than WoW. I'm not opposed to an ATI/AMD card if you think one is better in that price point. Just in case you need any of those specs, system is AMD Phenom 2 x4, 920, overclocked to 3.2, 4 gig of RAM, DDR2 800, Windows 7 Pro 64-bit. I look forward to what you guys have to say. Thanks in advance. Take it away, Josh.
Guess I can answer this one. I have played WoW a little bit in the years, but I was able to kick the habit. I mean, I lost 30 pounds in that just because I got out of my chair. Now and then.
Just from that act of getting out of the chair.
I stopped eating that whole pizza by myself and 2 liters of pop while raiding. And so, yeah, I mean, it's much better for your health if you don't play WoW. But anyway, if you are going to play WoW, if you've got a 9600 GT, even though it's overclocked, it's still I believe it's 96 shader cores.
Yeah.
Of the GeForce 8800 type, of series, even though it's called 9600. But anyway, the GTS 450 is more than double. Yeah, it's essentially double the overall performance of your 9600. So you would see a really big gain, and plus they are a little bit beefier shaders, a little bit more memory bandwidth, and so you'd have a much, much better experience in this latest version of WoW, which really does heavily leverage DirectX 10 and DirectX 11 functionality. In fact, you'll want to look up, and if you do upgrade to the GTS 450, you'll want to look up how to enable DirectX 11 rendering, because it actually cuts down on some of the shader passes, on some of the effects, and so it'll make it just a little bit faster. So you're going to be looking at, raids in 20 to 25 frames per second as compared to what you're getting now, and that's going to be a whole lot more fluid. You're going to be able to react a whole lot better. It's going to be a lot more fun for you, especially, you're not pushing out a really heavy resolution at 1440 by 900. So, for $110, a GTS 450 is going to be very good. And I think that is in many ways a better card than any of the other AMD cards in that price range. Namely, you're looking at the 5600 series, you're maybe looking at, say maybe the low-end 5750. So you would really, you'd really get a lot of bang for the buck from just getting and upgrading to a GTS 450. So that'd be a good call for you.
Roger that. All right, we do have one voicemail from a sad mystery man who wants to chat with us, so I figured let's go ahead and give that a play. Maybe? Maybe not? Uh-oh. Maybe we went too fast.
Yeah, hi, guys. I parked my papers and my garbage at the end of the driveway this morning, and you guys didn't pick it up. Can someone give me a call back regarding that? Thank you. No, seriously, though. This, just kidding. I got a GT, let me see, a 9600
this is the wrong voicemail.
That was last week, wasn't it?
Hey, guys.
That was last week.
Podcast. Excited about a new build.
Yeah, hi, guys.
Hey, PC Per. Found your website a couple months ago. Been going back and listening to all your podcasts. Love them. Oftentimes, you reference an IRC channel during your podcast, and was wondering if this is a secret PC Per members only, or if it's a public one, and if so, what's the server name and channel? Thanks.
I don't know if we want to let anybody in on that secret.
Oh,
do we?
What a man.
I mean, I guess we don't really kind of ever explicitly say this, or at least not very often. But if you want to go hang out with these guys at this IRC, it's actually not even our IRC channel. We record the show, this wonderful PC Perspective podcast, live on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern at live.twit.tv. Now, if you want to get in the IRC channel, it's really complicated. You go to irc.twit.tv, and that is kind of the community that we borrow from during our show. A lot of great guys and girls in there. I like to talk tech, not just computer stuff. So you are more than welcome to come in and join during the show recordings times. I'm also in there on Thursdays, most Thursdays at 9 p.m. for This Week in Computer Hardware, a show I do with Patrick Norton. So there's always a lot of tech heads hanging out at irc.twit.tv. Just keep off the lawn, according to Broken LCD, also in the chat room at that time. So we did get another voicemail. This was another one. I think we got two of them this week that were like 90-plus seconds, and that's a little too long to play back. But he had a question. Basically, he was worried that his graphics card being changed from by 16 speed to by 8 PCI Express speed because he was using one of the ASUS U3 S6 cards that integrates USB 3.0 and SATA 6 on a little PCI Express card. He was worried about that, and if it might be affecting his gaming performance. And I think we can all agree that the answer is no. Even if you're using like a Linfield or a Clarkdale processor, which only has 16 lanes of PCI Express bandwidth, 8 lanes is more than enough for a single graphics card of pretty much any GPU, right? I mean, any disagreements there, Josh?
No disagreement whatsoever. You got plenty of bandwidth in between the CPU memory and the video card with just 8 lanes of PCI Express 2.0.
Exactly. So that was the answer to his voicemail. Again, also try to leave your name and where you're from. You don't have to leave your phone number or anything, but both of those voicemails were for mystery people. So there's your mystery answers. All right, before we end the show, we are going to do hardware software picks of the week. Mine's kind of weird. I was trying to think of something right here, and then I remembered Ken was in the office earlier, and he showed me this little device he got from a website, squareup.com. And this is a way for individuals to start being able to take credit card payments. So this is really helpful. So if your buddy, owes you like $20 for a couple of pizzas in a row, he's like, oh, man, I'm sorry, I don't have any cash with me, blah, blah, blah. You say, that's no problem. Just give me your debit card. And you plug this little device into your iPhone or your Android or your iPad, and it just communicates through the headphone jack, actually. So you don't have to worry about which special connector you got. The one that worked on his iPhone also worked on my Android device. You plug it in, you type in how much he owes you swipe the card, and that minus a couple of, I think, 2% or something like that gets deducted and put into your checking account or savings account or whatever you have tied to it. So it's a really good way to either, A, steal money from people that leave their credit cards sitting out maybe at the dinner table, that type of thing, or get payments from people that try to say, oh, sorry, I don't have any cash, or I left my checkbook at home or something like that. It's a really good way to collect your money from people. I imagine the mafia would be a good clientele for something like this. I don't have your money, but here, I'll just put it on my charge card. Please don't break my fingers, something like that. So that's what I got. I just think it's a cool little device, and it will all be soon. We'll all be soon taking credit cards and hopefully RFIDs and all the other kind of stuff too. So now Jeremy's not here, so that makes Josh next in line for a hardware or software pick.
Well, two things. I already do take credit cards, but we don't need to go into that right now.
By take, do you mean steal them or?
And anyway, your pick kind of scared me at first because it started off with Ken was in the office and he showed me this little thing. And
yeah.
Happily,
that's exactly what I
reader. But anyway, my pick tonight is the Wii HDMI adapter. It's this little plug-in. It's like $40, which is kind of expensive considering that a Wii is only $199 for the entire system. But then you kind of look at a single remote is like $37, so it doesn't feel that bad. But anyway, if you want to get rid of some cable clutter, then this is a great little product. It apparently works very well. It's not going to upsample it to 1080i or 1080p. But your stereo or TV can do that. All this is doing is sending an HDMI signal with both audio and video through one cable to either your TV or receiver. Makes things a whole lot simpler. And for $40, it's not a bad thing at all. So it's by Neoya. I'll throw the link and
snap
there. And it's just a handy little thing. I'm going to order one as soon as I get back from CES. That way I can get rid of that big stinking group of component cables with left and right audio. So there you go. That's my pick.
There you go. Alan, you are next.
For my pick, I choose to put my iPhone in the oven.
Success,
actually. Yes.
I saw pictures of this, did I not?
Yeah, I threw something on Facebook the other day about it. So, my kids play with my old spare. Like, I have an 8 gigabyte iPhone 3G that's not being used, just sitting on the desk here. And so I sort of, there's no SIM card in it, sort of roundabout turned it into, what could be just an iPod Touch, I guess. And the kids play, games and stuff on there, whatever. Well, I don't plug it into the PC. So obviously Wi-Fi needs to work, otherwise you can't install any apps on it. Well, there's probably other people that have, regular iPhones that maybe their Wi-Fi stopped working and pissed them off a little bit. I saw this, so I was like, that's kind of weird. And it just shows up as, like, no Wi-Fi. Like, it's grayed out for some reason. Yeah. It just disappears, right? Seems to be a real common issue. And something to do with the Wi-Fi chip on the PCB is probably the thing that gets hot the most. Produces a decent amount of heat compared to everything else within the phone, right? Mm-hmm. And over time, since Apple uses non-lead-based solder on their printed circuit boards, that type of solder is really susceptible to thermal stresses. So it's basically just a matter of time before those soldered joints are going to crack and possibly lose connection. So things that make the most heat, over time, this thing is going to crack just from the stresses involved, physical stresses. Right. So the way to fix this is to remelt the solder. Easiest way to do that is you have to take the phone apart. It would be poor practice to put a plastic shelled iPhone into your oven. That would not end very well. Yeah, unless you want like a pile of goo on a pie pan or whatnot.
It's apple goo.
Yeah, apple goo. So basically, you take the iPhone apart, you get it all the way down to just the main board of the phone. Easiest way there is go to iFixit.com, and they have all kinds of teardowns. Or look on YouTube for any of the 10 million iPhone teardown videos that are out there by now. Pull out the PCB and just lay it on a cookie sheet. Take a piece of aluminum foil and make yourself a little sort of angled stands, just something to get the PCB up off the cookie sheet. So you want it up in basically in the air if at all possible, but you want it to lay flat on the EM shield. That basically one half of that PCB is a metal EM shield. You want that to lay down, and you want to preheat your oven This sounds like we're cooking stuff now.
This turned into Martha Stewart all of a sudden.
Basically, yeah. I preheated the oven to 385. I put the PCB in there on the cookie sheet for 7 minutes. As soon as 7 minutes was up, I actually have a pyrometer I use to check, and that's exactly how long it took for the PCB to make it to 385. So as soon as I opened the oven at the 7 minute point, that PCB was 385. Do not touch anything. Just open the oven, turn the thing off, walk away for like at least a half an hour. Because at that point,
tell your kids or dogs to walk away too.
Yeah, get everybody out of that kitchen, lock the door, okay, don't disturb this thing, because if you mess with it while it's 385 degrees, it will not work anymore, I guarantee you this, because whatever chips were soldered to that board, they won't be connected anymore. You would just basically knock them all over the place. So if you do this, from what I've read, about 9 times out of 10, it works. And I actually hadn't seen anybody completely fry one, just from like what people were writing. So as long as you feel good enough and you don't have warranty coverage anymore on this thing, and you're so willing to get your Wi-Fi back that you're willing to risk breaking the rest of the phone, by all means try it, because my children's iPhone/iPod Touch is, well, I just turned it on, so it has to re-find the Wi-Fi. Focus, you silly.
It's Alan fail.
Anyhow. Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I get for turning it off and then just turning it back on. Oh, there we go. Look. There's a Wi-Fi signal on my iPhone that doesn't do anything phone-related. Anyhow. It was getting nothing before that. The way I found out, like, just to verify that was what the problem was, of all things, I stuck it in the freezer for 10 minutes. And that managed to basically break the rest of whatever those intermittent connections were, and the phone wouldn't even boot up after that point, even after it turned back to room temperature. So I basically broke it the rest of the way, and then stuck it in the oven. From the instead of the freezer, I just stuck it in the oven, and then it came out and it worked again. So
very cool,
good stuff.
All right, just as a warning, PC Perspective is not responsible for you cooking your hardware components of any kind.
Yes.
Your mileage may vary. You just don't. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're crazy like Alan. So, but hey,
yeah, you gotta be a little nutso. Sorry.
Yeah, sometimes people do that. So
there's nothing like a skinny man in an electronics store. I guess you haven't seen that Paula Deen where she's in a candy store and said something. There's nothing like a fat girl in a candy store.
No.
Sorry.
No. You ruined all the momentum we had. I had all this momentum is building up.
Damn it.
Into the closing. Now I just have to start over. So that's going to do it for this week on the PC Perspective podcast. Again, podcast at PCPer.com, 1-888-38-PCPer, toll free in the U.S. and Canada. PCPer.com/podcast is the URL where you can find links and ways to subscribe to our show. Most of the time we have video versions posted there, or you can find them on YouTube now, youtube.com/PCPer. Now they let us post things longer than 10 minutes, which the show is always longer than 10 minutes. So with that, we will see you, or you will hear us, or something like that next week from CES. We'll have lots of good things to discuss. We may or may not be blasted and loaded at the time of recording, so you'll definitely want to tune in for that one. It could be the best episode ever. I'm just gonna put that out there. So with that, I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Al Valentano.
God, does next week it has to be better than how this week ended. It has to be.
It's got to be.